Hello everyone, welcome to our biology educational program for high school students. Together we will explore the key biological concepts in simple, clear and exciting way, helping you understand, remember and apply what you learn for your final exams. So get ready to dive into the world of biology where science comes into life. Choose the correct answer. The opposite drawing shows the connection of the bones of the appendicular skeleton to the bones of axial skeleton. What is the number of the vertebra that is lettered B refers to? As you can see in the opposite figure, letter A refers to the connection between shoulder and sternum. Letter B refers to the connection between sternum and vertebra. So we have to answer this question. Is the letter B refers to 6, vertebra number 6, number 9, number 18, or number 21? Let's remember. Already you have known that there are 5 groups of vertebra in the vertebral column. Cervical vertebra, and they are 7. Thoracic vertebra, and they are 12. Lumbar vertebra, they are 5. We have also sacral vertebra, they are fused 5 vertebra. And finally, we have 4 coccygeal vertebra, they are the smallest fused ones in the vertebral column. Here in the question, he asks about the connection between sternum and vertebra. Of course, it happened through thoracic vertebra. Thoracic vertebra connected to the sternum through ribs. Of course, you know that there are 12 pairs of ribs. Of course, you know that there are 12 pairs of ribs. The first 10 pairs of ribs are connected to the sternum, and the last 2 pairs are called floating ribs, as they are connected to the vertebra of the vertebral column and not connected to the sternum. Here, we have to know that the connection between vertebra and the sternum occurs through the first 10 pairs of ribs, from number 1 to number 10, and they are linked to the thoracic vertebra from number 9 to number 17. So, we have to choose the number from 9 or from number 8, starting from the first one of the thoracic vertebra to number 17. Here we have number 9 is the correct answer, which lies in the range between number 8 and number 17. So the answer will be 9. Let's move to another question. What is the main function of support material in the plants? If we see the choices together, we will find that more than one answer will be available. But when we concentrate in the head of the question, we have to know that only one answer will be the correct answer. Let's read the answers together. Increasing the rate of transport of materials throughout the plant. Of course, you know that transport of materials throughout the plant occurs through xylem and phloem. Increasing flexibility and allowing movement of the plant, maintaining the shape of the plant and of the plant cells, or controlling the entry and exit of materials into and from the plant cell. Of course, the main function of the support materials in the plant is to maintain the shape of the plant and the plant cells. Which graph shows a relationship between the percentage of fibrous tissues in the joints at the back of the skull and aging? We have 4 different graphs, as you can see. You of course know that by aging, the number of fibrous joints which are present in the back part of the skull decreases as fibrous joints change into bony tissues. So the number of fibrous joints decreases by aging. So here we have by aging the number of fibrous joints increases, and that's wrong. Fibrous joints or fibrous tissues remain constant by aging. Also, this is wrong one. Fibrous tissues decreases by aging, then it's still constant, yes. Or fibrous joint remain constant, then increases. Of course, the answer will be lettered C. A person suffers from inability to move the forearm in a semicircular way. What is the cause of this condition? Arm muscle fatigue, hand cartilage corrosion, fracture of the ulna bone, or dryness of the synovial material. Of course, teacher Mona told you that The ability to move the arm in semicircular movement related to radius bone, which is present in the lower arm part. There are two bones, which are radius and ulna. Radius rotates in semicircular way around the fixed ulna. So if we want to move the arm in a circular way, we have to use both bones, radius and ulna. If one of them get broken, so we can't move our arm in semicircular movement. So here the answer will be fracture of the ulna bone. Why does a person suffer from an increase in the level of sodium ions in the urine above the normal? Aldosterone hormone deficiency, excessive secretion of aldosterone, vasopressin hormone deficiency, or vasopressin hormone excessive secretion. Of course, you know that the hormone which is responsible for regulating the amount of sodium and potassium ions in the blood and urine is aldosterone. Aldosterone hormone responsible for decreasing the amount of sodium ions in the urine and increase its reabsorb to the blood, and the vice versa to the potassium ion. So here, if the person suffers from an increase in the level of sodium ions in the urine above the normal level, of course the answer will be aldosterone hormone deficiency. The next question, what is the factor that determines the speed of transport of hormones from the endocrine glands to their target cell or target organs? Is it the amount of hormone secretion, the type of cells secreting the hormone, contraction of cardiac and smooth muscles, or the type of medium transporting the hormone? Of course, the speed of movement of blood, you know that the only way to transport hormone to its target cells is the blood. When the movement of blood increases, the rate of transportation of the hormone to its target cells, of course, increases. So, what is the factor which affects the speed of movement or transportation of blood or hormone to their target cells? Of course, it's contraction of cardiac and smooth muscles. Cardiac muscle, which is present in the heart muscles to push the blood to all body cells. Smooth muscles in the wall of blood vessels to increase the movement or to increase the speed of movement of blood to transport hormones to their target cells. Study the provided figure and then conclude. What are the names of the two glands, number 1 and number 2, respectively? Of course, number 1 is intersection between decrease in the gland activity causes nervous irritability and excitability. The hormone which is responsible for this is parathyroxine, which is responsible for regulate the amount of calcium level in the blood with the help of calcitonin. Parathormone and calcitonin regulate together the amount of calcium level in the blood. And any decrease in the amount of calcium level in the blood causes nervous irritability and excitability. So the decrease in the gland of activity number 1 decreases the amount of parathormone hormone. So the gland which is responsible for secretion of parathormone hormone, of course, it is parathyroid gland. On the other hand, an increase in the gland activity causes nervous irritability and excitability. This refers to gland number 2, which secretes the hormone responsible for its increasing, responsible for nervous irritability and excitability. Of course, the hormone which is secreted from the gland number 2 is thyroxine. So, respectively, gland number 1 is parathyroid gland, number 2 is thyroid gland. Let's see the choices to determine the answer. Thyroid and parathyroid, adrenal medulla and thyroid, parathyroid glands, adrenal cortex, or parathyroid gland and thyroid gland. We said that hormone number 1 is parathormone, which is secreted from parathyroid gland. Hormone number 2 is thyroxine, which is secreted by thyroid gland. So the answer will be parathyroid glands and thyroid gland. The outer layers of the stem are seconded by the deposition of cutin and lignin, suprine and cutin, cellulose and suprine, or cellulose and cutin. Here, he didn't define or specify the type of stem. Of course, we have two different types of stems, which are woody stem and herbaceous stem. And of course, also you know that the outer layer of woody stem, it covered with suprine, to form a cork layer to help in the support of outer layer of woody plant stem. And in herbaceous plant stem, this is cutin to cover the outer layer of epidermis, and this is supreme, and this is cellulose to form collenchyma cells. So here, without specifying the type of stem, the answer will be supreme and cutin. What is the cause of high blood glucose in diabetic patient? Of course, you know that diabetic patient suffering from increasing the amount of glucose sugar in their blood. This is due to absence or extremely shortage in presence of insulin hormone, which secreted from beta cells in pancreas, as teacher Mona told you. So the cause of high blood glucose in diabetic patient, conversion of glycogen in the liver to glucose in the blood, glucose doesn't pass into the body cells, increased absorption of glucose in the digestive tract, or the glucose doesn't pass into the nephrons in the kidney. Of course, the reason of high or presence of glucose with high amount in diabetic patient blood is glucose doesn't pass into the body cells due to absence of insulin hormone or deficiency in its secretion from pancreas. Tissues that support the plants are stomata and sclerenchyma tissues, parenchyma and sclerenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, or parenchyma and collenchyma. Of course, this is a direct question. Tissues responsible for support the plant parts are collenchyma and sclerenchyma. If the opposite figure represents the part of the human skeleton, look at the opposite figure, then you will determine that this part is a part of vertebral column. The part X is a spinal cord which passes through the neural canal to be protected throughout the vertebral column on the backbone. The letter Z refers to the centrum part or the anterior part of the bony vertebra. The letter Y refers to the neural spine, which protects the spinal cord which passes inside the neural cavity or the neural canal. So, if the opposite figure represents the part of human skeleton, which of the following statement is correct? Part Z is connected anteriorly to the neural arc. The part shown in the figure belongs to pectoral girdle. Part X passes through the vertebra shown in the figure only. Or part Y is inclined downwards and carries the two inferior articulating process. So the answer will be part Z connected anteriorly to the neural arc. This is part Z, which represents the sternum. It connected anteriorly to the neural arc. Neural arc means a neural ring or neural canal. So the answer here will be letter A. What distinguishes the pulling movement in pea plant from the pulling movement in bulbs? Both of them are pulling movement, but pea plant represent the pulling movement in tendril, while in bulb represent the pulling roots. If the answer is dependence on auxins, support against winds, increased food consumption rate, or increased food storage rate. Of course, the something which distinguishes the pulling movement in pea plant from the pulling movement in bulbs is dependence of auxins. You already know that unequal distribution of auxins in the tendril part, when the part touching support, the outer part or the opposite part or the far part from the support, all auxins or large amount of auxins migrate to it. So there is unequal distribution of auxins. The part far away from the support contains larger amount of auxins or larger than the amount of auxins present in the part which touches the support. So the part which far away from the support increasing in its growth than the other part, so the support twin or coil around the support. The provided graph shows the state of sarcomere that is working normally. What is the numbers? 1 to 3 represent respectively. As you can see in the opposite figure, number 1 during relaxation, number 3, number 2. And during contraction, number 1 disappears. Number 3 still as it without any change in its length. And number 2, its length decreases in the case of contraction of the muscle. So which part we have in sarcomere? 3 different parts. H zone or H area, or we can call it by semi-lighted, semi-dark area or zone, which formed from only myosin thick filament of protein. We have also another area which is called dark area, completely dark because it formed of thin actin and thick myosin together. And also finally we have another area called light area, which formed from only actin thin filament of protein. During the changing the state of muscle from relaxation to contraction, of course the part which completely disappear, which represented by number 1 here, is a semi-light or semi-dark or H zone, semi-lighted area, semi-lighted band. The part in the sarcomere which its length doesn't change, number 3, is the dark, which is symbolized by letter A, and the part which its length decreases is a light band. So we have the choices from number 1 to number 3 respectively. Dark band, semi-lighted area, light band, dark band, light band, semi-lighted area, semi-lighted area, light band, dark band, semi-lighted area, dark band, and light band. Of course, the answer will be H, A, and D, and A, sorry, H, I, and A. So the answer will be semi-lighted area, light band, and dark band. Let's move to another question. The following figure shows the experiment used to verify the effect of light on the growth of the plant seedlings. Which of the following graphs show the possible response of the seedlings after several days? When you look at the figure, here number 1, number 2 have equal distribution of oxygens as light come to them in equal amount. But number 3 and 4, the light exposed to this part only from only one side. So all oxygens can migrate or will migrate to part number 3. So the highest concentration of oxygens in all parts of this figure will be in part number 3. Number 1, number 2, and number 4 have equal concentration of oxygens. And as you know, when the oxygens increases in a special part in a stem, this part growth increases more than the other part. So we have equal growth of 1, 2, and 4, but number 3, its growth increases more than the growth of 4, 2, and 1. So the figure which represents this will be number B, or lettered by number B. Let's see the answers. The answer will be figure B. Which of the following hormones has the highest concentration in the mother's body during embryonic development? Estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, or relaxin? Of course, the hormone which has the highest concentration in the mother's body during embryonic development or during the period of pregnancy is the progesterone. So the answer will be progesterone. Which of the following can cause and increase the secretion of cortisol? Decreased protein and fat synthesis, increased ACTH level in the blood, increased the blood glucose level, decreased the muscle glycogen level. Of course, cortisol secreted by the effect of ACTH, which secreted from the pituitary gland. So increase in the secretion of cortisol by increasing the level of adrenocorticosteroid stimulating hormone. Which of the following statement is true about the provided two figures during the muscle contraction if the two muscles have abundance of oxygen? Look at the opposite figure. This is muscle number A, and this is muscle lettered by B. If you carefully look at the two different types of muscles, or two different muscles, we will find that number of mitochondria in muscle A is greater than the number of mitochondria in muscle B. So let's see the choices to choose the correct answer of them. Muscle A has a higher percentage of glycogen than muscle B has higher percentage of glycogen than muscle A. Muscle A has lower percentage of glycogen than muscle B. Muscle A is less susceptible to the muscle spasm than muscle B, or muscle B has a greater number of muscle fibers than A. Of course, the correct answer will be C, due to presence of larger amount of mitochondria in muscle A greater than or more than the number of mitochondria in muscle B. The largest articulating vertebra in the human spine are vertebra number 7, 19, 24, or 25. Of course, you know that the largest articulating vertebra in the human spine are lumbar, and they start from vertebra number 20 until the largest one is the final one or the last one of them, which is number 24. So the answer will be number 24. The number of bones in the human hand is 27, 24, 29, 13. You know that the number of bones in the total number of bones in the arm is 30. We have to remove the 3 bones from our calculations. Remove the humerus, radius, and ulna. When we remove 3 bones, humerus, radius, and ulna, from the total number of bones which are found in the human arm, we will find that the number of bones in the human hands is 27. So the answer will be 27. The occurrence of muscle fatigue when tired is due to the accumulation of course, the reason of muscle fatigue is accumulation of lactic acid. So the answer here will be lactic acid. The tendril welts and dies if it winds around the support, the remaining part of it gets shorter after twinning, the support was a solid object, it didn't find a support to twin around. Of course, a tendril welts and dies if it didn't find the support to twin around. Which of the following hormones doesn't work on the internal balance together? Calcitonin and birth hormone, aldosterone, glucagon and insulin, thyroxine. Of course, it's thyroxine. When you drink a quantity of water, this leads to increased secretion of TSH hormone, increased secretion of antidiuretic hormone, ADH, or decreasing secretion of TSH hormone, or decreased secretion of vasopressin hormone. Of course, decreasing secretion of vasopressin hormone due to presence of large amount of water in the body in this case. Which of the following is responsible for secretion of oxytocin? The anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, the parathyroid gland, posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, or ovaries. Of course, oxytocin secreted from neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus part in the brain, and it's received by posterior lobe of the pituitary gland to secrete it. What is the main function of growth hormone? Stimulates the secretion of steroid hormones, inhibits cell division and multiplication, stimulates the secretion of milk from the mammary gland after birth, or regulate the growth of muscle and bones. The main function of growth hormone, of course, regulates the growth of muscles and bones. All of the following are true about vertebra at which the 5th pair of the ribs articulates except larger than the 7th vertebra of the spine, smaller than the first lumbar vertebra, no ligaments are attached to it, it has transverse protrusion. All of these characters are applied to it except no ligaments are attached to it. Of course, there are ligaments attached to it. The lower head of femur is connected to the main lower leg bone by number of ligaments 1, 2, 3, or 4. Femur is connected to the main lower leg bone, which is tibia, by 3 different ligaments: anterior cruciate, posterior cruciate, and medial collateral. So the number of ligaments which connect between the head of femur, the lower head of femur, and the main lower leg bone are 3 ligaments. The ratio between number of vertebral bones in the newborn and their number in adult man is less than 1, equal to 1, greater than 1. There is no relation. Of course, the number of vertebra in the vertebral column in newborn is greater than number of vertebra in adult, as some of them fuse together to decrease the number of bone in the adult man. So the number of vertebral bones in the newborn is greater than number of them in adult man. You have two statements. Let's read them carefully. The first is, all hormones of glandular part of the pituitary gland are related to the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics. And the second is, both FSH and LH control appearance of secondary sexual characteristics in males and females. Which of the following applied to each of them? Both statements are correct. Both statements are incorrect. The first statement is correct and the second is incorrect. The first statement is incorrect and the second is correct. Of course, both statements are incorrect. Hope that you enjoyed our session today. Love you from all my heart and love biology too. Goodbye.